Hello, and I'm Lisa Wilson, and welcome to today's Data Protection Quickie. And today's Data Protection Quickie is all about LIAs, Legitimate Interest Assessments. So what is an LIA? Well, a legitimate interest assessment is a perfect tool for you to demonstrate that you have legitimate interest as your lawful basis to process data. So it's a simple form of risk assessment and it's used standard across all businesses. So when would you use an LIA? Well, you'd use one every time you wanted to bring in a new system or a new process that you were relying on legitimate interest as your lawful basis for processing that personal data. Now, this could be something like a reviews platform, or it might be a new fraud detection system. It could even be a fingerprint scanner for your staff to monitor their timesheets. But those are the sorts of things you would use legitimate interest for. And you would want to prove that you had legitimate interest by documenting that on a legitimate interest assessment form. Now, interestingly, there is no specific requirement in the GDPR for you to complete an LIA. However, it's absolutely almost impossible for you to prove if you needed an audit trail that you had justification, and it would be really difficult for you to meet your obligations under the accountability principle without it. And let's face it, GDPR is an accountability process. So without it, you can't prove it. Now, the ICO have a fantastic template for an LIA on their website, and it's really easy to download and it's simple to complete. And I'm going to help you do that today and just talk you through how you're going to do that. So here we go. Now, the first part of the LIA is the purpose test. And this is all about where you have to explain why you want to use a new system. What's it going to do for you that you haven't been able to do before? And what is the benefit to your business? Is it going to increase sales? And if not, what would be the impact if you couldn't use it? Does that mean sales will go down? So you're explaining why you need to use this new system. You're also going to have to explain and make sure that you are complying with all the other regulations within your industry. So that could be PECA for marketing, direct selling. So there'd be lots of other regulations that you might have to just prove that you've taken into account as well. And that's the first section. Now, the second part of the LIA is the necessity test. And this is where we're now looking at if the processing is really, truly necessary. Do you really need to do this? And if it's a yes, you need to explain why. Is the processing proportionate to the purpose? And again, you need to explain why. And could you achieve the same aim without this processing? Is there another system out there that will do this job without being as intrusive or not rely on legitimate interest? So the third part of your LIA is a balancing test, and this is all about individuals' expectations. Now, there are three little categories to this one. So the first one is looking at the type of data that you'll be putting through this new system. So is it special category data? Is it customers' data? Is it employees' data? So you'll be looking at all these types of categories. Now, some of them won't apply to you. If your business is, it may not be likely that you'll be using children's data, but it will ask you that and you'll just say no. So you're just now filling in what category data you're going to be processing. And the second part is reasonable expectations. So we're asking now, do you have a relationship with that person already? Are they a client? Are they a customer? Are they a patient? So who is that data? What sort of relationship do you have with that person? And would that person expect you to now be processing their data in this way? Would you think it was reasonable if you had your data processed through this system? You'll be looking at what's on your privacy policy and what you've told them you are doing with that data when you collect it from them. So you may need to revisit your privacy policy and amend that, so keep that in mind. You'll be looking at your T's and C's as well, and that might be another one you need to change. You'll also be looking at how old the data is that you want to put into this system, because obviously we know that data has a life cycle, and when that life cycle is over, it's not really that great much of use. So you will need to look and see if it's still in date. And the other question you need to ask yourself around this reasonable expectations is this process widely understood? Now, from being a DPO for many years, I know that there are processes out there that are happening all the time, and we call that invisible processing. And that's because we are processing that data and we expect you to understand, or it's our expectation that you would understand that that would be happening. But actually, as a customer, we probably would not expect our data processed in that way. And I'm particularly thinking about maybe fraud packages that are brought in and various other systems like that we wouldn't expect our data to be going through. So you need to be looking at whether or not this is invisible processing. Is this new system you're bringing in widely understood? And if not, you need to update your privacy policy to make sure it's very clear in there that this is exactly what you are doing. But this will be a determining factor in whether you think LA, a legitimate interest, is acceptable. Now, the third little section is all about likely impact. So now you're looking at what would the impact be on that data subject if something went wrong. So you'll be looking at if there was a data breach, how would that impact on the individual? You're also looking at, can you trust the third party? Would the third party be processing that further? Is it passed to another sub-processor? How is that going to affect the data subject? We've talked about invisible processing, and again, we're looking at what would be the likely impact on that data subject if they knew that invisible processing was taking place. What would the impact on them be? So this one's all around the impact if something goes wrong. Now, finally, it's the decision-making time. So on the form, you'll see that there's a yes or a no. And you need to look at that document and be confident that you have enough detail in there for you to justify using legitimate interest as your lawful reason for processing that data. Now, there is a part in there afterwards where you can put your justifications. And I would always suggest that you put 2 or 3 sentences just to cover yourself off, to prove and to justify why you believe legitimate interest is acceptable in this case. Now, don't be afraid to also say no, you don't feel we have legitimate interest. And I have looked at lots and lots of LIAs, and I've completed thousands of them myself. But there have been the odd 1 or 2 that I have refused because I really did not feel that we had legitimate interest to process that data. So don't be afraid to say no. And I would really suggest that you do have the courage to say no if you're not happy with it, because it's on those occasions when you do say yes, but know in your heart that it's probably not legitimate interest, it comes back to bite you in the bum. So be careful. So now you have your LIA all completed, you're going to secure it somewhere safe. Now, LIAs quite often go hand in hand with a DPIA, so it really is worth then putting them together and securing them in the same place. But your company will have its own way of doing things, so secure it to that. My name is Lisa Wilson, and thank you for being with me today for our Data Protection Quickie on LIAs. You can find me on Facebook, LinkedIn and Instagram under Lisa Wilson Data Privacy. Hope to see you soon. Bye.